So the story goes like this. There's a guy who's driving along in his car, and he spots a young woman or maybe a teenage girl trying to hitchhike. He picks her up and she gets in the back seat and tells him where she wants to go. Along the way, she complains that she's cold, so he loans her his jacket. When they get there, he turns and looks in the back seat and she is gone. He assumes that she went inside, but she took his jacket and he wants it back. So he goes and knocks on the door, and this couple answers. He asks about the girl who just arrived, and they're very confused because there is no girl who just arrived. But then he sees a picture hanging on the wall, and he points it out and he says that's her. And he's told that that is a picture of their daughter who passed away several years ago, often in a car accident. Later on, he goes to the cemetery and he finds the jacket that he loaned the girl hanging over her tombstone. There are a lot of variants of this story. Another common one involves her leaving something, often a book or some kind of personal item, in the back seat of the car rather than taking his jacket with her. So he knocks on the door to return it, and whoever greets him there identifies the item as belonging to their deceased daughter. Sometimes the parents aren't involved at all, and it's an elderly woman, often a nun, who makes two predictions about the future, one of which is going to happen in the very immediate future, and the other one, it's implied, would happen more long-term. For instance, there's a World War II-era version of the legend in which the driver is told that the war will end within a certain time frame, and that there will be a dead body in his car before the end of the night. As he continues driving along, he encounters an accident that involved an ambulance, and there's a person in the ambulance that desperately needs to get to the hospital right away, so he offers to drive them the rest of the way in his car. However, the passenger passes away before they make it to the hospital. Most variants of this story are about ghosts, but that's not the case for all of them. For instance, there are Hawaiian versions that feature the volcano goddess Pele, and there are Mormon versions involving Nephites, disciples from biblical times who, according to Mormon tradition, are still alive today. Nor do all versions of this story involve a hitchhiker. That's the most common variation, but there are also versions in which, for instance, they're taking a taxi, and there are versions from before the invention of the automobile that feature various horse-drawn vehicles or people riding on horseback. In fact, Child Ballad 272, the Suffolk Miracle, does something very similar, in which a living person is traveling with a ghost, but doesn't realize he's a ghost until they reach their destination. There are a few variants where the person who gives the ghost a ride does not live for very long after, but in most versions they're not harmful or malicious. It's unclear sometimes as to whether they are aware that they're dead, but regardless, they just want to get to their destination. While the idea of finding out that you've been traveling with a ghost is a little bit creepy and unsettling, the ghosts don't usually harm the person who gives them a ride, and in fact, often they give warnings or make predictions that can help to avert future tragedy. For instance, there are versions where the ghost prevents the driver from ending up in a car crash. It's worth noting here that the hitchhiker is usually either a college-age or teenage girl or an elderly woman, someone who wouldn't be typically seen as very threatening or dangerous. So even though hitchhiking and giving a ride to a hitchhiker can both be risky things to do, and even though the girl is a stranger who turns out to be a ghost, the fact that she is usually someone who would be seen as vulnerable and non-threatening might be one of the reasons why these stories usually don't involve malicious ghost activity. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the ghosts are described that way because the stories don't really involve anything dangerous for the driver. There are hitchhiking ghost stories from around the United States and around the world, from various times and places, often adapted to the time period that they originate from, and even the specific location where the ghost was supposedly picked up. There are some even that will reference real places, real streets and highways and intersections and stuff like that. In fact, the story has such widespread popularity that it was even used as the inspiration for a part of the Disney Haunted Mansion, in which guests are warned that hitchhiking ghosts may decide to follow them home. Despite being a very old legend, the story of the hitchhiking ghost just keeps coming back. For instance, earlier this very year, a truck driver on the highway in Arizona caught footage with his dash cam of what appeared to be a ghostly figure along the side of the road. Of course, it was probably just something weird going on with glare or lighting, but the driver did believe that he had seen a ghost, and he said so when talking to a local Fox News channel. And apparently that stretch of highway has seen many car accidents and is believed by some people in the local area to be haunted. When USA Today posted the video footage on their website, they even used the headline, "Was that a hitchhiking ghost?" a reference to the popular urban legend. Personally, I first heard the hitchhiking ghost story in a college class on folklore, not in a context where it was supposed to be believed as true. I don't actually believe in ghosts, so I don't think that I would be inclined to believe the story if I were to hear it presented in that way. But I do think that it's a very interesting story, and it's easy to understand why someone who does believe in ghosts would buy into it. After all, it would be very difficult to verify, and the details that are often given about specific locations in the real world give it some amount of at least perceived credibility. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you liked it and you want to see more from me, be sure to subscribe. I post new videos on Mondays and Thursdays.